Arsenal. Arsenal. Why Arsenal? Why are Arsenal, Igal, being doubted? They have had a couple of poor games, a couple of poor performances, but suddenly Jesus is overrated. The wheels are going to fall off. You're leveling out. You're going to fall behind very quickly. What's going on? What's going on, Igal?
I feel like everyone's just been waiting for any sense of doubt or concerns to creep in. And you know what? We've played away from home for the last couple of games. We haven't had the best performances. We haven't been dominating games as much as we have. We haven't been scoring as many goals as we have. But yet, this is only our second loss of the season. It's only 3 games this season where we've dropped points, and it's like the overreactions are staggering. Now, there are some concerns about the fact that we've only been scoring like one goal over the last couple of games, and the fact that we have been showing a little bit of fatigue in some of our performances. But I also put that to everyone showing this kind of form over the month of October. A lot of people have been seeing a drop off from their performances in their teams. You look at Manchester City; they've actually dropped more points than us this month. You look at a lot of other teams; they've had similar performances throughout this month because guess what? All of our teams are playing either midweek and on the weekend, and it's going to be like this until the World Cup or until the European competitions are over. So I just think it's a little bit of an overreaction, but yet there are some things that I can take away and say, you know what, we need to improve on those things.
What are you saying, Patty? Are Arsenal leveling out? Are they running out of gas? Did they peak too soon? Or is this literally the same as Man City, by the way? Man City have won one game in their last 4 and failed to score in 3 of them. Is this just the same for Arsenal? They're just in a little bit of poor form.
Yeah, I got to keep the same energy and consistency because I said that we're going through a little bad patch. So I guess Arsenal are as well. I just think, like I said to a gal, and people said I was deflecting. I actually wasn't. I was just speaking on what we're speaking on now. Arsenal are struggling to score more than one goal in the game. So it's going to be interesting to see where their goals come from because Jesus, I think, hasn't scored since he scored against us, isn't it? It's been a while since he's actually scored. So yeah, they're leveling out. They're not playing as dynamic and as cutting edge football as we saw. It'll be interesting to see what happens. This is the thing, European football at its finest. When you're playing 2 games a week and the games are tough now, you played good opposition in PSV. They're a decent, almost, they're just the bar below Champions League, but they're obviously really good and they're much better than most of the teams in the Europa League. They're a good team, hence how the games he played against them. So yeah, and Arsenal now have to, continue to get points on the board because the chasing pack are going to be, everyone's going to be up for playing Arsenal now because of how they've started the season. So you're now considered a big scalp. I mean, you've always been a big club, obviously, but this year teams are going to be up for playing them, and you're seeing that. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, I need to see more from Arsenal in terms of goal scoring and the distribution of goals. So yeah, I'm watching with a keen
You
eye.
say that about goal scoring, but last night was the first game that we didn't score a goal in a game this season. So it's
Yeah,
not
but
it's
you're
not it's not
like
as bad as you're
what
making it seem.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying you're struggling to score more than one goal a game, and that is a legit statement.
What do you make of this comment here that says the style that Arsenal are doing causes a lot of fatigue? You can't keep that style up for a whole season. What are you guys saying? Because it was the start of the season, it was very energetic. We saw what they did to Chelsea in pre-season. Even it was like a million miles an hour. Is there a case to say that that Arsenal might be burning themselves out?
They might need
I, I
to get
think
some
I think
inhalers, man.
the way that we play. What? What'd you say?
You might need some inhalers.
Nah, stop that. Listen, we're not Liverpool, but when it comes to the whole thing about fatigue, we play so intense in the first opening minutes that we usually beat teams in the first 20, 30 minutes of games where we bag a goal or we grab a couple opportunities to put ourselves ahead. And if it means that later in games we need to manage the game better, that's on Mikel Arteta and the players. They need to manage themselves better. But the whole fatigue thing, it's not about the style of play. It's the fact that we try to win games in the first half, and that's what we've been doing for majority of these games this season.
I don't think you boys got anything to worry about. If everyone else is everyone's allowed a bad patch, man. Tottenham allowed a bad patch. United are. Chelsea are. I don't think there's much to worry about, man. I think you're a bit lucky you got Nottingham Forest on the weekend. To be fair, like Jesus might not score now. Guarantee he goes packs 2 in against Forest. All I'm gonna say, Gal, yeah, I said this to Monts, innit? Make sure you beat. Before I say it, make sure you beat Forest,
bro.
because I
I'll
swear
tell you
down next
something.
week.
I have 100% record at the Emirates. I'm not
Wait,
losing
so
that's
hold on,
nice.
hold on.
That's okay. That's okay. Like I said,
See-
Gal, make sure you beat Forest, because I'm coming. I'm coming
If
at
I'm
every
there-
man like I did to
hold
Monts.
on,
You're
bro.
not gonna like me. Just make
Listen,
sure you beat
my
them.
projection for
If I'm in the
Arsenal.
Emirates, it's guaranteed 3 goals. We're
Hold on,
winning.
you got my projection for Arsenal to drop was it's from the second round of the Europa League onwards, because that's when the games start coming thick and thin. And you know, the Europa League's a lot of games. So have they got out of their group yet? Or they're on the have they got out of their group?
No, we need one
Yeah,
more
they've
point to
qualified.
secure it.
They've qualified.
That's
We've
good.
qualified, but we need
I
one more
think-
point to secure it.
I think for now they'll be all right. But once you know they start to get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, if they get there, the Europa League, that's where I feel sorry for. I don't know how they're going to survive all those games, because I don't think they have the squad for it. So let's see how Arteta maneuvers it. But I think that's when they start to drop and start to get in that race for the top 4 with everyone else.
You know what? Just like everybody else's teams, I hope my team strengthens in January too, because we're hearing about Chelsea wanting to strengthen. We're hearing about Man United wanting to buy a striker. I would be happy if over the moon actually if we can get a midfielder and if we can get another person to play in that front 3 that could help us out, or give rotation to either Martinelli or Saka or even Jesus, depending on who that person is. Right now, I feel like Arsenal might be lining up to have themselves a decent window in the January window, and that would be bringing in 2 bodies. If we can bring in a midfielder and if we can bring in that winger, that could elevate our team to not only in the league but also competing on all fronts, be it in the cup competitions, in the domestic cup competitions, and in Europe.
Look, I feel like, yeah, listen, I think it can go either way. I don't think Arsenal win the league as of right now. What would have been interesting if you'd have beaten Southampton, though? I was so desperate for you to do it, because you'd have been on 30 points after 11 games. And no team in the history of the Premier League has been on 30 points or more after 11 games and not won the league. In fact, there'd only have been 3 other teams in the history of the Premier League, City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, to have 31 points after 11 games. And I went back to like the 80s. I couldn't find any team with that many points after 11 games. Like, that's how well Arsenal have started. So top 4 has to be a guarantee from this point, because I'm just talking pure maths. To fall off from this point of being Arsenal and not make top 4 is the biggest collapse in Premier League football history. Factually, like, you can't get away from it. Like, they have to maintain it, and I'm sure they will. Investment in January is key. But I do think people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon of, I knew they wouldn't maintain their early season form. Well, of course, not for 38 games, because nobody really does. I think it would be crazy to think they would maintain that. It's how they bounce back. And I think, Kaz, you're bang on. Like, having Forest at home after a couple of poor results is the perfect tonic, because you should be putting 3 or 4 goals past them. They're open, they can barely defend, and they're away from home. They don't even have the home support to help them. It's a really important game, because you then have a very hard week. You've got Zurich, which you'll beat. You'll beat them. But you can't take too many risks and rotate too much of your first team, because if you do and you lose that, it's extra games in February. And as Monstar points out, that's a tough time of the season. And then on Sunday, 12 p.m. kickoff, you play Chelsea. So you have to, you need to get this Forest game and Zurich game won early, so you can take players off and rest, because you don't want to be going into that Chelsea game on the back of 2 very intense games against Forest and Zurich. If you're winning just 1-0 in those matches and you're not putting them to bed, you can't afford to make 4 or 5 substitutions and throw on some kids and throw on some fringe players, because you won't want to take the risk. So it's going to be a really interesting week for Arsenal to see how they kind of handle it. But equally, you could come out this next week with 3 wins, and suddenly everyone's like, wow, maybe you can win the league. So I think it's going to be a very intriguing and very entertaining week from an Arsenal perspective, definitely.
Terry, I'm not too worried. But one thing that's kind of got me upset, people always getting on to Ramsdale nowadays. Now, he had a shocker versus PSV. I'm not going to lie. But we're still forgetting that this guy is extremely young for a goalkeeper. Goalkeepers don't peak until they're close to 30. So as a 24-year-old, being compared to all the top goalkeepers in this league who are all in their 30s or reach their prime, to compare him to that at this moment in time, we're almost like saying he's not going to get any better, or goalkeepers don't get any better from the age of 24. Like it's extremely harsh to just write him off and say he's absolutely garbage, or that he's this guy who's costing us games, because the last couple games, our performances from a lot of players has been poor. It wasn't only on Ramsdale against Southampton. It wasn't only on Ramsdale against PSV. Realistically, it was against the majority of the players in the team dropped off.
Let me ask you a question. By the way, I love how when we get onto Arsenal, your voice actually changes. You speak slower, you speak calmer. It's so funny. You literally change it up, right? But you said it last night on the match reaction, and again now. You spoke about Nketiah and backing him. Jesus' lack of goal. Ramsdale in goal. You keep saying loads of players aren't playing well, but at the same time, you defend each and every single player and go, well, it isn't about blaming individuals. So if lots of individuals are playing badly and they're not to blame, but then the team is still failing in terms of performances, I asked you last night, why though? And who is to blame then? What is it? The only other person left is Arteta in the system, right? Like, what is it?
I'm looking at how we play away from home, because our form away from home.
Okay, that's why though. It's either individual players not delivering in the system or the system. Or am I missing something? I'm not even trying to put you on the spot, but you don't want to blame any individual player and you don't want to blame the manager. So why are you not performing?
I'm looking at the second half, and I am looking at Arteta, and I'm saying, how is it that you've brought on even our big boys and we still couldn't get something? We couldn't even get solid in that second half for his PSV. But at the same time, I'm not overreacting and saying, oh, this is going to be the norm going forward. I am looking at the manager, and I'm looking at certain players when they mess up. But it was a combination of poor defending and at times individual errors. So that can't only be on the manager.
Is that poor defending because individual mistakes, or poor defending because the system wasn't working, or the system wasn't good enough? Like, I'm not even trying to put you on the spot.
I would say
the second goal was Ramsdale. Like, you can't blame the manager for Ramsdale
100%.
missing a punch. Like,
Yeah.
Equally, like in the game against Southampton, I don't blame Arteta overly, because your attackers missed 3, 4, 5 gilt-edged chances to make the game 3 or 4-0. That's individual player mistakes for me, not your system.
Yeah.
But then Ramsdale shouldn't have been beaten like that for the goal. You know, Southampton, don't get me wrong, it was a good run, but Ramsdale didn't make himself big, and he literally gave him the whole goal to aim at.
Okay, so the midfield against PSV continuously got bypassed. The defense made an error in Ramsdale, leading to a goal, and on the final third we were not clinical.
Okay, so I'm going to pull you out this again. You said the defense. What do you mean by the defense?
In that game, you had against Southampton, Saliba got beat, and in the game versus a PSV, you found another situation where one of our defenders got beat.
So that's not in defense. That's not in the defense letting you down. That's Rob Holding and Saliba getting taken on there. So that's individual. That's my point. I'm not trying to dig you out. Everything you've said to me, just how you're wording it, is individual mistakes that are costing you.
Yes, individual mistakes, and at times it was literally the whole team dropping their intensity in the second half, both games. So that could mean fatigue from the first half, or it could just be a combination of what everyone's been telling us.
So why do you then push back against the criticism of individuals if it's individuals that are making the mistakes?
No, I am pushing back against the over-the-top criticism. I get that there's criticism, and you can have concerns about Jesus's form, right, Ramsdale, everybody else. I'm not avoid of not criticizing the players. I'm just saying, when people take it over the top and call people overrated, or make or take points and say this guy's absolutely garbage and he has no job in this team, he shouldn't even be wearing the kit, that is where I say you're going too far, because it's like one mistake and Ramsdale's now terrible. And he shouldn't even be our keeper.
Who's saying that? Arsenal fans or rivals? Because rivals are always going to go over the top to banter you. That's our job. So Arsenal fans aren't saying that Ramsdale, are they?
No, there's always the one or two people. There's always the one or two people on social media that are the loudest, that you hear going at individual players more than team performance.
Yeah, there is a couple, and I'm not gonna throw their names out there, but a gal's actually right on that one.
Let me tell you what I've heard, Terry. I've heard that Lacazette 2.0 in Jesus. That's what people were saying. I've heard people making fun of Ramsdale for the goal, because Southampton put out a clip that people are making fun of Ramsdale. And you know, people don't even call Thomas Partey by his name anymore. They call him number 5. Obviously, people don't even call Thomas Partey by his name anymore.
Yeah, but that's because of stuff we can't speak on. That's not to do with his ability.
I didn't even collate the two things.